Hello, everyone, and welcome back to All for United WFC. I've just seen Michael's comment: Connor's hair and Keris's train is a recipe for lateness. Yeah, you're actually like dead on. So well done. That's exactly why we're late. But yeah, welcome back, guys. We're doing another tactical show, which we haven't done in a little while, but we've had the time to sort of reflect on the Villa game and break down a few points from that that we want to go into. But first of all, Connor, how are you?
Yeah, all good. We were both saying this before we went live. This has been the most stressful week. I think we're only on Tuesday.
I said when we joined the call, what a year this week has been.
It's been pretty manic.
But we're here. So looking forward to talking through some of the points from the game. Obviously, first of all, just kind of initial thoughts after Liverpool. I think we needed, I know you guys will have gone over this a bit on the review show, but we needed a big response. Obviously, Villa, we know, are not in a good place at the moment, but Connor, were you still impressed with how the team played?
It's a weird one because Villa are just not very good. And we kind of said this yesterday. It's hard to gauge because they're not. If this was against maybe if we do the same on Sunday, I think Everton obviously a really good side at the moment. I think then you can really see the turn of corn. But I think we had to. We had to go out there, and we were dominating from minute one really. But we had to do that because if it had got to half time and the score's still 0-0, nerves start to set in. Remember what happened the week before, kind of thing. It gets a bit edgy then, but. Yeah, no, we dominated from minute one, and I think we needed that. Terland needed a couple of goals. Well, she didn't need a couple of goals, but it was nice to see her just get a couple of goals after injuries. And yeah, I don't think anyone played bad. It's the first game I've really watched where I couldn't pick anyone that was below a 6 really.
No, I think I pretty much agree. It was obviously Villa aren't difficult with respect to play against at the moment, and I think a lot of what we're going to highlight, for instance, what we're going to highlight with Elisabeth Terland. A lot of it is badly defended. But we'll jump into the slides things. The first thing we're going to talk about is Elisabeth Terland. Obviously scored a couple of goals, but we're going to focus a little bit more on her link-up play and her ability, not just in that box as well. So this was an example I spotted when I was rewatching the game really early on of just sort of her awareness and footballing vision. In the first top left, you can see Jade down in sort of the middle bottom of the picture. Has literally just taken a throw-in. So this ball has come through the air from throw-in. Terland, who's circled on the right, has spotted over her shoulder Grace Clinton's run, and she actually flicks it on with the outside of her foot. It's a really good move, I think, because otherwise, if she takes it down on the inside of her foot, you're in this situation where she's got to beat the fullback, she's got to cross in, there's not really anyone in the box. Whereas the way that she's positioned herself and to pull off that actual technique to flick it on like that, you can see it ends up with Grace, and all of a sudden there's this massive space in the middle. You can see sort of how as it moves over to the left-hand side, we're trying to create a bit of an overload because Villa just were not prepared to defend that side so quickly from a throw-in. And that all comes from the sort of from Terland just having that awareness. And let's not forget the technical ability to literally just flick on with the outside of her foot a throw-in and accurately as well. It's hard because we have to use stills on these shows, but it found her really accurately and was an excellent, I thought, bit of football. Just really showed what she can do that's not just poaching in the box.
It's something I'm going to say, I think, throughout this, but it's just football intelligence, I think it comes down to. And I think particularly, I was going to say specifically then, but particularly when we talk about Hinny, that I think, sorry, I wasn't laughing at that. But yeah, particularly when talking about Hinny, I think I'm gonna say that a lot when we talk about kind of football intelligence. Because I think that's when you're talking about Turner in this particular play. That's exactly what it is. It's just that knowing of and understanding of where your teammates are at any one time. It's not because. Well, I think one criticism of this United side as we played throughout the season that players been too slow. We move the ball around the back very slow, and it's very easy and predictable to defend against. You need that understanding of where each other are on the pitch, so you can make quick moves and you can make quick passes. Like obviously in this instance, I know it slows up. I don't actually remember how this attack kind of ends in the end, but you need that understanding of where your other players are, so you can do those moves and whatever else, because it catches the opponent off guard more than anything.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit in a while as well. I've got a slide all about how the sort of, because I agree the sort of argument of it's become a bit predictable, taking too long at the back. I think we're going to come on to talking a bit about Anna Sandberg, and I think whether she can add a dimension in that. I've got a shot which really shows like how well our fullbacks are kind of stretching the play when we try and play out from the back, and I think it makes us a lot easier to get the ball from the back to the front quickly. So we'll come on to that, but on the next side, just to carry on talking about Terland, just a few more examples here, because I think what really impressed me, we've seen her. We saw in the derby at the Etihad her pressing Kiara Keating as like a really obvious example of her importance in the press. But we don't talk as often perhaps about how she helps the team sort of win the ball back in the final third a bit further away from goal, because it might not always lead to a goal. It might not be that she pinches it and scores, but there was so many examples that I saw when I rewatched this game of her putting pressure on Villa defenders or even midfielders, working really hard. And it forced them, she wouldn't necessarily make the tackle, but she would panic them into playing the ball long, giving away possession. I was screenshotting them all, and then I actually stopped because I found like 5 or 6, and it's boring to look at. So on the one from the 11th minute, you can see...
That's one way of putting it.
Well, it is, though. There's one from the 11th minute where you can see her sort of like... That's her there bearing down on... I think it's the Villa centre-back. From that, she ends up just booting it long, and we head it straight back. I think Gabby George makes it and heads it straight back up. It's all those times where we really just stopped Villa building a rhythm, stopped them building any sort of like spell of possession. And then there's one that I really like in the 23rd minute, like along the bottom here, you can see like how well she's pressing and how well she's tracking the run of the defender as well in that first frame on the left. Like it would be really easy for her to sort of hover in that space on the edge of the box and not really push for the ball and wait for it to come to her. But I think that work rate is such a good like attribute to have in a striker, and it makes me really like she doesn't feel like she's an isolated figure up front. It feels like she's joining into the rest, not just the front line, but the midfield as well, and really like making herself a presence felt across the defensive line. It's not just that the centre-backs mark her and that's it. It's that she's actively pressing to win the ball back as well.
I think it just goes, a lot of people in the chat are saying this. I think Lotch just put it, Andrews just said it there about nice to see kind of Terland getting involved, not getting involved, but how growing into the team and like I said, that understanding with the rest of the team. And I think that's what we're seeing with Terland's always been very good at pressing from the front. A lot of our goals, certainly since the turn of the year, has come from that. And when she's not played, we've noticed that drop off. People always talk about the goals, and it's obviously she's a striker. She's going to want to score goals. And obviously she will likely get into double figures in the WSL this season, considering she's only one away now. But I just think off the ball, when you're looking at it in these instances, you can see what she offers from that point of view as well, because it's great that she can score goals as well. Obviously, they will keep coming for her, absolutely. But it's this as well. If you're going to press, you need a striker that's going to press in the front, and then everyone follows you, especially in a single striker system. So if she's going to go, the rest of the team have to follow. And we are pretty good at that. It's one of the strengths that we've had this season, that our press has been pretty good. When Terland goes, whether that's Toon behind or Miyazawa and Bizet and Golson in particular, either side, all go together. Yeah. Terland's a big point. She is the focal point of her press. And, I know this is something we'll probably get to later on, but I put it on the tweet for a reason. She has the least touches in the game, most games that we play, but that doesn't mean to say her influence is any less. It's actually a really big influence. It's just maybe not something we see because it's not always on the ball.
Well, that's what I mean. Like the impact that the point that we've just spoken about is one where she doesn't actually necessarily make a tackle, but it's just the pressure that she provides forces that pass and forces that long and over hit pass or even like wide pass into the stands. And I think that really can't be underestimated in terms of how important it was in just stopping Villa putting together like any kind of possession. And then the last one we've got on this slide is just the goal, because it feels quite rude not to even like mention one of the goals she scored. But I think this is just really intelligent positioning from her. Granted, I said at the start that some of what we would speak about would be poor defending by Villa. And you can see what I mean here, like the amount of players that are around her but nowhere near her. She's got acres of space. But, a lesser striker would just be like steaming in, trying to get as close to the 6-yard box as possible for an easy finish. Whereas she's got that kind of intelligence and composure to know that actually, if I hold back, that centre-back is looking for the sort of the second centre-back that you can see that's right in front of the keeper there. She's clearly anticipating the ball to go across the 6-yard box. She's not anticipating for it to come back out towards the penalty spot. And she's realised that, hung off, and can then take a shot from there instead. And it's those little small details that I think make her so effective, because she's a good, I think when you think of like a classic number 9, it feels like maybe quite a predictable role. But I think her positioning and the way she varies, the way she makes her chances is really important in not making her predictable. She's not easy to play against.
No, I tend to agree. I want to pick something out just on that goal, actually. I've only just noticed because you put the stills on these slides. I want to come back to just a second how good Terland is. The only criticism I have, and this isn't even on Terland, is the fact that we've only got 2 players there. No one else has caught up with Terland in terms of Galton on the left. That's Clinton kind of in shot with obviously Jade. But Toon's not in shot, Galton's not in shot, which is good on Terland because she's obviously got there first, the quickest, and obviously the movement as well. But I would just like maybe Toon or Clinton's, just somebody maybe on the edge, because if that's cleared, it's going to the edge of the box somewhere. We'd just like one of our players maybe there. But on Terland, like you said, it's her movement that gets her into that position. She's just kind of holding off the back shoulder of the defender in the first shot. And it's 5 seconds. It's 5 seconds. The ball's not even at Jade's foot yet on that first frame. So it's 5 seconds from Jade picking it up to Celine obviously putting the ball across to Terland. So again, it's that quickness, particularly on the right-hand side, that we see so often with Jade and Celine on that side. And Terland's obviously alert to it. So she's going to get a lot of goals like that. The more Celine plays off the right, Terland will get a lot more goals like this. Because that's what you want in your striker. You want her to score simple goals, and you just want her in and around the 18-yard box because that's where she's best.
Yeah. And it's funny you should mention hold-up play, JJ, because that happens to be the next slide, if Connor wants to bring up the next slide. So this was actually, I thought this was one of her best goal contributions, not to downplay the 2 that she actually scored, but I thought the role she played in building up the 4th goal was great. So you can see her just in the middle there coming onto the ball, and she just holds it up so well. And that like physicality, and again, the intelligence, she spots Melvine Mallard's run down the right, all while holding off the centre-back, is able to play that ball across right into a path. Mallard has suddenly got so much space to run into. And then I've highlighted as well the run that she makes, because it would be very easy for her to sort of like give up after that again. But her work rate, you can see in the final frame there that she has run in and ready to finish at the back post if the cross goes all the way through. She hasn't needed to, because Leah Galton's, done what she does, which is score and fall over. But it was, I thought, a really good bit of hold-up play and really good awareness of sort of not only where the wingers were, where the cross was going to come from, but also of the position that she would need to take up. Because her going to the back post and Galton to the near post is not like the most kind of natural as you would expect from a centre forward and a winger. But it worked out really well. And I think it's just another really good example of her intelligence.
I'm glad you pointed out, because I didn't even notice this on the first goal, to be fair. On the first goal, the 4th goal, to be fair, because I didn't even pick up on this, that Terland's positioning is right at the back post as you put in the 4th frame. Yeah, as I said, this was my favourite. I said this last night. This was my favourite goal for that very reason. It's kind of tune into Clinton, straight into Terland. Mallard's obviously on the right-hand side at this point. But it all starts, or it all comes from, again, Terland holding it up and being able to play it out wide quick. And that's what the benefit of having players out there like Mallard in this case. It would have been Celine in the first half that are able to get on the end of these things and can look up and obviously find the space. But in Terland's case in particular, I think someone put this in the chat earlier. It's that complete forward. She's a brilliant finisher. She presses from the front and she can hold the play up and bring others into play as well, as we saw on this goal. But like you just said, just because she's done that, it's almost like that's not job done. She wants to then get into the back. But obviously she was on a hat trick at this point, so she kind of probably wanted the goal as well. But she's made that run. And like, so this is 64 minutes in a game that we're 3-0 up, that we're going to win anyway at that point. But as you said, once busting a gut to get in there at the back post, which we need. I said this on the first goal. My one little criticism was that the fact that it was only Terland in the box. This one, you've got Mallard, obviously, has put the cross in Galton. Terland's at the back post. I think that's Grace behind her. I can't see I'm frame 4 in this. I think that's Tooney on the edge of the box as well. So we've got 4 or 5 players there in the box. So yeah, she was just brilliant all round. And I think that's it's good because we need a forward like that. I know everyone wants an out-and-out striker and a pure goal scorer, and I think she is that. But we also do need this as well, and thinking of the balance of the team and just that chemistry on the pitch. We talk about the chemistry off the pitch all the time, but like I said, you need it on it as well. Just that understanding, as I said, for the first goal of just where each other is, and it makes the game a lot easier.
Yeah, and just on that like work rate as well, of the last one that I've picked out on the next slide is just some of her defensive work, which I was also again really impressed with. So you can see over here, like the Villa defence got the ball up in the top right corner. Not a massive threat at this point, but she's spotted that, and already she's tracking the run of her centre back that she's marking, tracks it all the way, as you can see as it goes through the frames, all the way back into our half, and is putting pressure on. That again, this is what I mean. She didn't make a tackle here, but she forces her into a pass, which, as I've highlighted in the last frame there, she's forced her into a pass she hasn't really had time to think about. So she's passing to a teammate who's got, I think, Hinny and Grace bearing down on her there. So, and we immediately, one possession back, turned it over. I think this was like a minute before we scored, in fact. So before Grace scored the third goal. So you can see again here, just like her work rate's importance in that kind of defensive element of her role as well. Because it's not her job, right? As a striker, then she would be kind of pretty much within her rights to not run the whole way back through her own half. But I really like that, or many players wouldn't at least, but I think it's really good that she does. And she's, her intelligence in forcing that pass is really good, rather than she just stands the player up and just puts pressure on, just lets her know she's there, so that she feels forced to pass without having maybe thought about exactly where it's going, rather than, for example, if she dives in there and she gets it wrong, she's probably going to have a yellow card. If she dives in, even misses it, doesn't make contact, then all of a sudden that player's away and running. So the right decision to do in that situation is to stand her up like that and to just sort of jockey, just like put a shoulder in, just let her know you're there, and force her to make a poor decision, which she ultimately does. And I think, it's just another real example of her intelligence in those kind of situations.
And it's something that stats doesn't cover as well, because again,
exactly.
I love a good stat, as people will know on these things, but I think, there's stuff like this that won't, like you said, it won't count as a tackle, it won't count as as anything like that. So it just won't get registered as something. That's why I always say the eye test, I think, is a lot better than stats sometimes, because it can tell you a lot more when you watch the game back, certainly from a higher vantage point, which obviously most TV coverages are at these games, certainly at the bigger grounds. Yeah, and like I say, it's just a work rate. Most strikers won't do that, but I think the team we've got, and that's why I've got no issue with, I think at the moment, the team that we've got, I know that there's, we're going to talk about the left side in just a second. Obviously, my biggest gripe after Liverpool was Miyazawa in the midfield, but I think the rest of the team is balanced. It does what it needs to do. Everyone works for each other. If a player goes out of position, we'll see another player cover it. We saw that with Maya and Jade a couple of times. Celine does it. If Jade goes forward, Celine will drop back. Terland here. Terland's further back than Jade is, in this instance, because Jade and Celine have gone forward, obviously pressing from the front. Terland's realised that and has gone back into almost like a right back position, if you will. So again, it's just that understanding, like I said earlier, of where your teammates are and just covering for each other. Which you're going to need if we're going to go on and qualify for Champions League and compete for the Champions League or compete in the Champions League. We're going to need that.
Yeah, I think I agree. And that sort of covering off of each other, I think it speaks, this team and the manager talk a lot about togetherness. And like, I know it sounds sentimental, but I do think this is where you see that sort of come into play on the pitch. And we're going to move on to that. We'll move away from Terland. So we could talk. There's loads more that I could have picked out to discuss her. But we're going to talk about Hinata Miyazawa, who, again, like we've been debating sort of like her role in the midfield, because I sort of wasn't that happy to see her played in that holding midfield role a little while ago. I thought she was much more influential higher up the pitch. But like whichever way you look at it, I think she's such a sort of, her role that I want to focus on in this kind of little show is like how she balances the midfield in terms of transitions. Because that was a target that Mark Skinner set at the start of the season, was for United to control these kind of transition moments better. And I think she does it so well. Like, her positioning is so good. And I love that she is simultaneously defensive minded in that she is willing to track back 30 yards, cover every blade of grass, whatever. But she's forward thinking in that as soon as she gets the ball, she's looking to attack. So, like, I've pulled out, you're going to have to zoom in on these, but I've pulled out loads of different examples here. Like, I don't know what that one in the 9th minute was because I don't have a note for it. But in the 12th minute, you can see sort of like, as the ball comes to her, her positioning's so intelligent. This is when Grace Clinton's got it on the edge of the box. She's taking a touch there in that first frame. And then then Hinny receives it at kind of like an awkward angle because Grace's touch is loose and it gets cleared. Immediately, she's positioned to head it back into the box on that like second frame in the middle, if you scroll down a bit.
Sorry, I'm not. Do apologize. Sorry, if people can, I'm going to have to say this out loud. If people can see why I'm laughing, it's because this first slide, right? When we brought this on the screen, it reminded me, for anyone in the UK who's ever watched Anne's Next Saturday Night Sacred, you know when it goes around all the screens and like pick a window. As soon as we flicked to this side, I saw that and I couldn't unsee it, and it's been making me laugh ever since.
Do you know where I made this slide?
Where?
On the train.
I thought you might.
Yeah, so that's what I'm sorry if the presentation isn't exactly as we would all have it. But anyway.
You wanted me to zoom in on the middle one, yeah?
Yeah, so you can see Grace sort of took a bit of a loose touch, and it comes the Villa defender who's cleared it. She's been there immediately ready to head back out, not just like kind of random, but she gets it straight back into Grace. And then this is what I mean on that last third frame at the bottom. You can see like how she's immediately thinking of where she can go next. So straight away, rather than sort of just like standing and admiring a header, she immediately she's been well positioned to stop the break, which she does in that second frame, stops the clearance, heads it back in. And then instantly, the second later, is turning out to provide an option out wide. It's that she can do both of those kind of defensive and attacking roles in those transition moments. I think makes her like, it's just that intelligence and that sort of all-round ability, which is so valuable to us. And then you can see it again in this sort of on the right-hand side. This was 25 minutes. So this is just after we went ahead. You can see like where I've highlighted kind of her positioning, really intelligently, really well positioned to stop the break. And then again, sort of force the play backwards. So she forces that first pass, then in the second frame continues on to force the second pass again. And I think this sequence ends with, again, another long clearance that only needs to happen because we're putting pressure on. So I think what I mainly took from kind of rewatching her in this game, I think her awareness of when to press and when to sit off and cover the space is really, really good. She doesn't dive in when she shouldn't and allow a player to get past her and allow a break to start. Because when we do have her in that holding midfield role, if she gets left behind up front because someone's gone past her, then we're in trouble. But she just doesn't do that because her positioning is so intelligently done.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think she is probably, when you talk about football intelligence, I think she is probably the best in our squad at that. Miyazawa obviously talking about. And this is why I say when she's not playing, you can tell when she's not playing. And I think when she signed, like there was a lot of people who didn't really know where we're going to play. Obviously, just come after the World Cup as Golden Boot. Winner, kind of playing in the front three almost. And like she came to us and we're kind of playing her in different positions, didn't really know where she plays. And I think Lanzell's obviously put this a couple of times in the last couple of shows that he thinks that Mark is maybe trying to turn her into that Hasegawa type player that City have. And he may well be right because we're seeing Hinny get deeper and deeper in this United team. She played a couple of games as 10 to start with, then she dropped as an 8. Now we're seeing her play as a 6. And it's like, I can see it. I'm not against it, to be honest, because I think she is so intelligent on the pitch that she can do that. And her cover, it's spatial awareness more than anything. And like you said in the 3 shots in the middle, it's just being in the right place. It's covering off a space. You'll hear managers talk all the time about space. And, I know Mark likes to talk about invading and we've got to invade quicker and all that kind of thing. But that's purely because it's from a tactical point of view. Football is just laid out into a grid of zones. And you want to be able to close those zones down, and Hinney's very good at just standing in them and just block. Because, like I said, you don't always have to make a tackle. You don't always have to do something necessarily. Just stand there and block the passing lane. Because if you do that, as you said, Villa can't get out, and then she makes herself an option as well. I think that's a key thing. I don't know whether we're going to talk about it a little bit more, but just on the ball as well, she makes herself available for every pass. And that's so important when you're trying to play out from the back, that you need someone in midfield that's an option. And that's something I don't think we have when she's not playing.
Yeah, 100%. I still don't know how I feel about her playing in that sort of deeper role, just because I think against Villa, she had a lot more creative freedom despite being back there, because they didn't offer very much, was the kind of simple truth. Was she was able to go forward and contribute more up top than she would have against, you know, an Arsenal, a Chelsea, a Man City, if she was playing in that holding role. But I mean, yeah, on the next slide, you can see just like another example of her kind of covering the spaces. So there's been a poor clearance, but also it wasn't that bad because there was no one there until you can see I've marked where her run came in from to collect this clearance. So she's collected the ball after running basically across the whole edge of the penalty area, plays this nice little like 1-2 with Tooney, really like intricate passing, which again, it's not really picked up because it's only still images, but there was a nice little kind of interchange between them. And then when the ball gets to Grace Clinton in this final frame here, she passes it to Grace. And then you can see the way Grace's body is, she's turning to pass out and kind of switch the play in the other direction. But Hinney's already preparing like a run into the box. So had Grace not been positioned like that, it was a really nice move by her to just, she would have just been on time to kind of run into that box and potentially shoot from there. It's a shame that didn't pull off and it went the other way. But again, this sequence in, I think, about 20 odd seconds after this, 20, 30 seconds, ends with our second goal, because Villa can't clear their lines. And that all comes from the best attempt they had at a clearance, ends up with that first frame with her picking it up because she's run all the way across the box. And that just shows you kind of how important she was to maintaining that attacking momentum, because she's forward thinking. Like, it'd be very easy in that first frame to her to kind of turn back and pass backwards or pass out wide to the wing and sort of progress the ball maybe, but slow the attack down a little bit. Whereas actually what she does is to look for the slightly more ambitious option through the middle, but it's an ambitious option that's more direct, creates that sort of chaos in the Villa defence. And because of that, they are rattled, basically, for want of a better word. And that's why we end up with our second goal about 40 seconds later. So I thought that was a good example of her being that forward thinking after completing a defensive action. She's not just thinking about the defensive action, she's thinking what comes after it and how can we make the most of the transition as well.
I think, yeah, I don't have too much to add on what you just said, to be honest, because I think you could pick out, you could watch a whole game and just watch her, and I think you would learn so much about how to play that midfield role in any capacity, because going forward or defensively, I think you just learn so much of just watching her. I'd love for someone to do that actually and just have like just 90 minutes. Just, I'm sure stat people do, but like just watching her. You know, do you remember back in the day on Sky Sports? You probably don't care if you're too young, but back in the day on Sky Sports, they used to have full-on player cams where you could just watch just one player. On certain big games, it used to be on Sky Sports back in the day. I don't know, they might still do it. I don't know. Technology's moved on a lot since.
Feels like the sort of thing that these days they probably make you pay like an extra subscription fee to do or something.
Yeah, to be fair, but I just love to see how Hinney scans the game, understands the game, and she would be a fascinating person to speak to just about football, because I imagine she be her understanding of the game would just be incredible. Yeah, that's what I said a bit earlier. Offers something going forward, and offers a lot in terms of the midfield balance and defensively as well. We're just such a better team when she's there.
Yeah, I think I've got one final example of her again. I think what really stuck out to me was, because it always feels weird, like really like piling praise on players after a game where we did play well. Like, I'm not downplaying how United performed at all, but Villa did not offer much, I think, until their subs came on in about the 70th minute. They then started to pick up a little bit of energy. I do want to talk about that really briefly at the end, just to as a sort of what do we think that was about? Was it just tiredness on our part and fresh legs, or was it something deeper? But anyway, before that, this was another one where Hinny was in transition again. So Terland presses, which already we talked about, to kind of force that loose pass, and that loose pass goes to Hinny, who's like that circle slightly further to the right in the second frame. I've then got, I made a new shape today on Canva. I made a triangle to show her scanning. So you see her sort of scanning the pitch, and is immediately there to pass to Tooney. And then she already is thinking kind of like, how can she play off it? So it ends up with this nice little sequence where she's immediately not only scanned and picked up sort of where the players are, but immediately is able to make that pass. It turns into a nice little forward move, and the ball goes through to Leah Golson, who unfortunately just isn't quite aware that Lucy Parker's on her shoulder. And Parker's able to kind of come forward and win the ball back. But then again, we see Hinny's sort of defensive role, because Parker wins the ball sort of slightly off to the left of this second frame, carries it all the way into the United half. And then in the fourth frame, that is Miyazawa challenging her, forcing her to play the ball through. And again, it's not a tackle, but she has forced her to play the ball and there's no one there. So again, you can see sort of she's created the attacking move. And then immediately after that, I think, is there timestamps on this? Yeah, so she's creating the attacking move in the second frame. 10 seconds later in the fourth frame, she's preventing the counter attack. So I think that really sums up her importance.
No, I agree. And before I get to that, I just want to quickly comment on something that Drew said about, Hinny barely loses the ball. I just wanted to double check this because I know her pass completion is always really high, whenever I look at it. It's actually the third highest out of anyone we've got. This is in the WSL alone. First is Emma Watson, but it's only 3 passes. So it's going to be high because there's only 3. If you take anyone who's played over 300 passes, she's second only to Millie Turner, and that's only by 0.7 of a percentage, so not even a percent between her and Millie. Her pass completion is 86, which for someone who plays in midfield is insane.
Yeah, exactly. When you consider sort of a lot of, not to criticise Millie Turner, but we were talking about earlier, a lot of those passes that go just between her and Maya Letizia, if you take those out of the equation, I would imagine that Hinny's pass completion would probably be the highest, and she's playing in much more compact areas.
So that's it. So her passing is just unbelievable when you're looking at it from that point of view. The next down from her is Hayley Ladd, but there was only 7 passes registered in the WSL. And then the next down from that is Maya, obviously with 80, so 7% lower than what Hinny's on. So yeah, from that point of view, bang on. She, every time I look at the stats when I'm looking through a game, she's always 90 plus, for the most part. So I think this was actually one of her low 84. That's low for her. That is. She needs to improve next game. Yeah, she's always in around the 90. But yeah, this is what goes back to what I said earlier. She can do everything. She can create the attack, and then she's back defending, covering in front of the back line, which I'm sure Maya and Millie will massively appreciate. Having somebody as as mobile and as energetic as she is, kind of covering that defensive line in front of them, because it just helps. Now, again, it closes the gaps down. Look, exactly like you said with frame 4, she's closed the gap down, so the opposition player's got to go wide.
I find it really interesting to think about as well, like when we signed her, the kind of the marketing hook. Like I'm not naive enough to think that this is the only reason that the club signed her, but the sort of marketing hook we have signed the World Cup Golden Boot winner. Whereas like in reality, I don't know how many goals, you'll know how many goals she scored for us, but like her main attribute is not as a goal scorer for United at all. Like I think she's with Japan, I think I'm right in saying she was playing out on the wing. We've brought her like much more central because of her sort of technical ability. And I think that's played out really well. It just, I just find it a really interesting comparison. The sort of the player that maybe based on reading like articles and press releases and whatever fans might have thought they were getting. I don't think that's the player that we've actually got in terms of goal scoring, but the player that we've got, I would argue, is actually just way more valuable.
No, I agree. And I think that was a weird summer anyway, because obviously we signed Golden Boot winner We already had the Golden Glove winner in Mary,
Yeah,
and we
then we
signed
had the
Guerrero,
World
who was
Cup
a
winner in
World Cup winner.
Guerrero,
So it was at the time. It did look very much like a marked. And I said this in her first season. We didn't really know where. I don't know if she had her injury, but we didn't really know where her best position was. I still don't, to be honest. I still don't know whether I prefer her in the 6 or the 8. I'm still a bit I don't know. I would be intrigued to see how she plays actually in a game against the top 4 as the 6. With Grace and Tooney ahead. I don't know whether it would work.
I'm sure you're going to get to see that at some point over the next 6 weeks. Do not worry. She's definitely going to at some point in those 3 games. I suspect we'll be trying a few different things. But anyway, let's move on from Miyazawa to sort of one of the last points that we wanted to talk about a little bit, which was, as we always do, we were debating, I think, on the preview show, weren't we?
I was going to say, I love how this is now a conversation, but when I asked you the question, you didn't want to answer it.
No, because you asked me who did I think should start, and that I said there's no point me answering that question because we know who's going to start. Gabby George is going to start if she's fit. This is a tactical analysis, Colin. It's not about who's going to start. And also, the fact is, neither of them are going to start in the next game because one of them's suspended and the other one's injured. So it's a completely separate conversation. So I am aware of the irony of discussing our various left backs when 2 of them are. We don't know the extent of Anna Sandberg's injury, but we know that she had to come off due to injury. And we know that Gabby George is suspended. So I'm aware of the sort of irony.
Sorry, carry on.
As well, because when Gabby got that yellow, I immediately texted our group chat saying, "Oh, well, we'll get to see Anna start then." And it's like, "Oh, no, never mind." But oh well. Let's talk about her a little bit then. She came on at halftime after Gabby kind of picked up that booking in the first half. But yeah, you can see this was just one of the. I want to talk about her contribution to the attack because, like I've said before, I think this is where she potentially has an element to. I think Gabby George absolutely plays an important role in helping our attacks down the left wing. But I think Anna brings a little bit more kind of pace and dynamism and unpredictability kind of in that area. So this is one just after the start of the second half. This is just after she's come on. Her passing's really good as well. So she receives the ball from kind of Hinny and she's out on touchline, links up with Tooney, and then immediately links up with Galton. But again, she's forward thinking and immediately is trying to make that run down. You can see in the 4th frame, into the channel. But what I wanted to note as well is you can see how she's drawing players to her, that 3 of them. And I think, is that Galton in the 4th frames, Galton, Tooney and Sandberg. They've drawn basically 4 Villa players between them. And I've highlighted there's just a massive space in the middle now. And you can see that space sort of has only grown when you get to the 4th frame. It was slightly overhit, the ball from Tooney, but if Sandberg had got on the end of it, there was just acres of space for Leah Galton to run into. And I think that was sort of this is one of the things that for me, she really adds to the attack because I think Gabby's passing is very good and she can run past people well. But I think Anna Sandberg has that sort of element of she's not afraid to turn the burners on and just try and get past a defender rather than sort of hold up the ball and, who can I pass for? Her first instinct is not who can I pass to, it's how do I go forward, even if that's just me by myself. And by doing so, she draws in the defenders and she creates space for everyone else to play off her. That's why I'm not as concerned when I see her sort of in a lot of the examples I've highlighted, she's ahead of Leah Galton. And I don't always love wingers being much further back than their fullbacks. I obviously don't mind the odd overlap, but I don't always love when fullbacks are basically up on the byline and the wingers are somewhere back in the middle of the half. But I don't mind it with her because she draws the defenders so well and creates so much space.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, I agree. What happened there?
I needed to breathe.
I wasn't expecting to stop. I don't know what happened to me then. Yeah. Oh, geez. I don't know what's happened these last 5 minutes. But yes, I agree. it's why I asked the question on the preview, because I think our left side, our right hand side, I think anyone's had any complaints with since the turn of the year. It's Jade, it's Maya and Jade, it's Hinny maybe on that right channel, and it's Bizet on the right. The left, I think, is a bit more. Well, it's certainly a conversation point. It's certainly a conversation point. I'm too tired for this. It's certainly a conversation point, because I just don't think. I feel for Gabby a little bit, because I think if people go back and watch Gabby from like pre-ACL injury, not the one she had at United, the first one that she had, she was a very explosive defender, very fast, very quick off the line. Whereas I don't think she is that anymore. And that might be because of the injuries, I don't know, but she's not as quick as she was. And I think we noticed that a little bit from a defensive and an attacking point of view, that when Anna comes on, we really see that difference. Obviously, I know you've highlighted a couple of things on here already, that I just think we miss that a little bit from an attacking point of view, because the right side is so fast. Celine and Jade are probably two of the fastest in the whole squad, let alone just in their positions. Whereas the left, maybe we're not seeing that as much. So I think it's definitely an area we need to look at. Someone put in the chat a bit earlier on that Anna's injury record is not great. And it worries me a little bit that, even before she came to us, she gets injured a lot. And already with us, she's missed quite a lot of games and so on. So that worries me a little bit. Whether I don't know. The good thing for me, though, if you're looking at potential left backs, if we are ever going to be short, should Jess Simpson come back next season, that's a solid option that we've got there. Brilliant assist by her at the weekend, by the way, if you haven't go and see that. So yeah, I thought Anna was brilliant in the 30-odd minutes that she played. I can't lie to you, I didn't even realise she came on for the first five or so minutes. I
don't admit that on the show, Connor. Just keep that to yourself.
Hey, it's the other side of the pitch, and I didn't realise. I was too busy talking. But no, I thought she was brilliant. I've decided
I don't like the order of my slides anymore. Will you go through to the last one? Because I think this
Number
is better.
12.
Yeah, that's the one. I just think it works better. Sorry, guys, you've seen the live construction of a show here, because, as I said, I put this slideshow together on a train. So this is just another example of where I think, I don't mind her being more attacking and Leah being more defensive, partly because, when she eventually did have to go off, it was Leah that had to come in at left back. For one thing, so we know Leah can, in a pinch, play that role. So I'm a bit less concerned by it. But you can just see her willingness here again to switch up with the winger, and her willingness to compete in a duel as well. You can see her run off the left in the first slide. She ends up in a battle with Grant, right down at the touchline, which a lot of people could just give up on and try to win the corner. And we know she is great at winning the corners. And at taking them specifically, but instead she wins this battle. And as you can see, everyone else expected that ball to go out of place. Again, so much space, and it's Leah Galton that receives the ball, crosses in, and then it ends up in a Terland header at the back post, which could well have gone in. So again, it's her it's work rate. I feel like I've said it a lot today, but that was something that jumped out to me in a lot of the players that we looked at, was just their ability to their ability and their willingness to fight for something actually until it goes out, not just until you think it's going to go out. So that was that slide. And now I need to decide what I'm going to do next, because I've changed my order.
I was going to say this. Just while you do that, this comment from Brandon just made me laugh. Watching you two is like watching two siblings fight over who gets more ice cream. See, that's why I love these shows.
Harsh.
Some people who don't understand our humour a little bit are going to walk away from this thinking we don't get on.
No, we do. I swear we do actually. We are actually friends.
Put a disclaimer out there, I
think. Yeah, go back one. Go to the one before that. It's just another one of her, sort of what I said earlier with her. When she receives the ball, her instinct is how to go forward, even if that is by herself, not just who she can pass to. If you look at the first one here, there's plenty of options she has, but she could just go kind of in central to Hinny, and you can see again, that's a good option. You can see Hinny's made herself available and kind of offered that pass there. Looks in, decides against it, instead carries the ball really far. She's willing to kind of take that fullback on. And again, she's drawing all these players over. Like you can see in that last frame, she's got 1, 2, there's one that's with her, and then there's 2 who are basically running towards her because they're concerned. If in that situation, I think it's Tooney in the middle, if Anna does manage to get out of there and Tooney makes that run into sort of the central zone of the box, she's unmarked because of how many players Anna's managed to draw over towards her. So I think that's one of those other ones that stood out to me as just an example of her, how she's just a little bit maybe unpredictable, partly because a lot of these players haven't played against her before. They don't really know what they're getting. So when she turns on the pace, they sort of go, oh, okay, like we need to kind of be a bit more wary. And it ends up with her drawing all these players over to the left and leaving this really valuable space in the middle. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And then the other ones that we've got to talk about are, oh yeah, the one before, we're just going backwards now. This was just one that I think I wanted to speak about, that we touched on earlier, in terms of how important our fullbacks have been to just being that little bit more direct. Because you can see the ball here is between our 2 centre backs, as it used to sort of frustrate me that it often was when we would just ping 2 or 3 passes around at the back there rather than be direct. I think we're getting better at not doing that. So you can see from highlighting, especially against teams that weren't pressing that well, like, let me be pretty clear, we've got to be adaptable here. If in this situation Villa are pressing centre backs, I would not want my fullbacks to be as high up as Riviere and Sandberg are in this frame. But because they're not, it's fine, and we know to exploit that opportunity. So they are both in tons of space, and they could have picked out either of them. In this situation, picked out Jade Riviere. Again, like from the timings, that first frame is 3 seconds before that frame, and then 7 seconds later, so 10 seconds after that first frame, Jade is down at the byline. Like, it's that directness that I think we potentially lacked at times before, that having 2 real, like, kind of flying fullbacks on the pitch really helps. And I think that Anna's capable of that as well. And then the last one, if you go backwards again, this was sort of the only thing where I think if I was to pick a negative in inverted commas, the sort of reminder of how lucky we are sometimes to have a backline that's played together so much and doesn't always get necessarily muddled up with each other. And like, I'll explain what I mean a bit, because just to be clear, I'm being really, really picky here. But this is like, I think some point in the second half. So our defenders have been confident at this point because we're 3-0 up. And as they have been often throughout the season, they've been confident to kind of step out and challenge for the ball a bit higher up. You can see that Millie and Anna have both done that in this first frame, and they've just lacked that little bit of awareness to spot. It's either Nunes or Grant, I think it's Grant, kind of running away down the right. And then this is sort of the only one where I would say that this is what gives me a little bit of cause for concern when people say put Anna Sandberg in from the start, is that sometimes there's that tiny bit of like just not having played together as a back line so much. You don't quite have that awareness of what each other's expecting, maybe. And again, this is me being extremely picky, but because they both go in for this duel, this leads to Grant getting like away down the line. You can see in that third frame, like Anna's trying to challenge her, but she's got the right side of her. But then again, to end on a nice note, like Hinny is able to pick up that cross. I've circled her in the first frame, so you can see where she is. She's really aware. Again in the second, and then by the third, she is tracking the run of whoever that is. I think it's Missy Bo-Kearns, but I could be completely wrong. She's tracking Missy Bo-Kearns' run with her eyes so that she's able to get in by the fourth frame and meet that and clear it before she can have what would be a really good shot at goal. So that's another first, to take the kind of positive, it's another example of how important Hinny is in covering defensively and how much ground she covers. But I don't know what you think, Connor, because I was trying to be a little bit balanced and think, when we're having this sort of fullback or left back debate, like what elements are there that Sandberg maybe doesn't bring as much as Gabby George does? Like, do you think experience is one, or is this me just like literally looking for something to pick at?
No, I think you're right to highlight it. It's definitely something I'm sure the coaches will have done when we got back to training or whatever. Because yeah, I'm just going to zoom in on that top right slide. You don't want your fullback there. That's far too inside. When both of them are there,
that's the thing. It's they're occupying the same space a little bit, or a lot.
But again, look who it is again.
No,
I'm going to go back to it. I know we're trying to focus on again. She's back there covering, and this is what I said earlier. I mean, it's not in the slides, but there was a point in like the 90-something minutes, Hinny was back at left back covering for Leah at the time, and it was like she's literally everywhere. But yeah, maybe it is a case of they've not played as much together, so it's hard to get. I mean, we do get cut open a little bit too easily still for my liking, if I'm being honest. Forget obviously Villa hit the bar in this game. They had a couple of other chances in the game. Like, don't get me wrong, they weren't great. We did pretty well. They were never really they weren't ever going to win that game. But yeah, we do give up chances still. There's a reason our kind of shots against and expected goals against and all that kind of stuff is one of the high. Well, it is just the highest in the top four. And it's not far off some of the teams in the mid table as well. So we do still give up chances. But again, I think they can be recovered when you've got players like Miyazawa there or other players in the midfield that have got the legs to be able to cover the ground to fill those gaps whenever they appear.
Yeah, I want to sort of briefly talk about. I don't have screenshots of it because I wasn't sure if we'd have time to speak about it. But I think after their substitutes came on, Villa's this is, and sort of added that little bit of energy, we looked a lot more open in the midfield than we had been. That was realistically when they started creating chances. Like, they had more momentum in the last sort of 15, 20 minutes of the game than they did in the first hour and a bit. Do you think, is that just them having fresh legs and us being a little bit more tired? Or is that openness in midfield something that I'm more worried about? And if it is, like, how do we counter that? Do you think it's having Hinny further up the pitch so she can stop these attacks earlier? Do we think it's having her further up and Dom in the holding so that there's that extra layer of defensiveness? I don't know. What do you reckon?
Yeah, it's probably the latter, to be honest. Dom and Hinny together, because again, for me, that was the best midfield we had at the start of the turn of the year. It was Dom, Hinny, and Toon, and it worked really well. So maybe that's your kind of solution. I don't know, to be honest, but that's probably what I would be going for, looking at from that point of view. And it's hard to gauge because the later stages in the game, you're obviously going to tire at some point. I think you only have to look at some of our players. Terland, when she came off, looked knackered on Sunday. Jade was the same. A lot of them looked really tired, so they obviously covered a lot of ground. Kind of chasing the ball down and obviously going to the end.
I think
maybe
it always
stands
out to me. I have never noticed Hinny looking tired ever, and she runs around more than anyone. I don't understand how.
Do you know what it is with Hinny? She doesn't ever look like she's running. She almost just glides. She just looks like she's jogging, yet she's so much quicker than the players around her. It's really bizarre. But yeah, so maybe it's that, and I definitely think it's, even though we're talking about Hinny maybe in the six, or Dom's played this season and done a pretty decent job, I would still be looking at that position in the summer and just getting some. I mean, we had it in Hayley Ladd, but I would be looking at somebody to just go in there that gives us a bit more cover in there. Certainly if we're going to be in the Champions League as well. And it just maybe frees up other players, and maybe Janssen can then go back into centre back or something like that. There's options there as well.
This is why I think, though, that because I think when you look at where our problems are sometimes arising in midfield, it's usually further forward than where that holding midfield. Even if we were to sign the world's best holding midfielder, whoever that is in everyone's book, I think our problems still sometimes start further up than that, and we get cut through too easily before even reaching that player. I think that's why I prefer Miyazawa in that more advanced role, because she just is so good at stopping those attacks, really, really quickly, just breaking down counter attacks by covering the right spaces, just not letting the opposition build up any rhythm. Because I don't think that, I think that even if you were to swap in an excellent holding midfielder, those chances might get a bit closer to goal, but I think they'd still be created. I think you still need, not to state the bleeding obvious, but you still need a player further up the pitch who is contributing to kind of breaking down those attacks earlier in the process.
No, I was going to say I agree because I don't have anything to add. Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's a nice note to end on. There you go, everyone who's worried about us arguing. We do agree. But that is everything that we had to discuss. Thank you so much, everyone, for all your lovely comments in the chat as well. It's always fun putting these together. It's one of those things that's very time consuming to do and very fiddly to do. But seeing all your comments really does give us a nice ego boost and makes it worth it. Yeah.
I was just seeing if there was any questions for us before we wrap up. Because it's been a while since we've done a two-person thing.
Lena Oberdorf, question mark. Yes.
Yeah, that's not happening. sorry to burst your bubble. She's still not played for Bayern, yeah? Because obviously she signed for Bayern, then
can't
injured.
Remember.
So.
Oh yeah. Well, there you go. Any other questions? No, we've literally.
Michael asked about when the club are going to announce Skinner's contract extension.
Well, so it's theoretically by the end of the month is the decision on, and just to be really clear on this is not the decision on necessarily like him staying or not staying. This is the decision on whether we extend his contract by a year on the current terms. So even if that does not happen, there is still a chance that a new deal could be negotiated and he's still the manager next season. Just to kind
which if I'm being honest, I think that's what it's going to be now.
What, you think they're going to do a new deal, do you?
Yeah, I would imagine. This is on the basis that I think we'll get top three. That I don't know. I just think that's what we're going to get. I don't think it's going to be soon, though. If I'm being honest, I don't think we'll hear anything till probably the last 3 games of the season, so maybe another month. So
I'm not sure.
I'm not basing that off anything that I've heard or anything else. So that's purely my opinion. That I
don't know why the deadline for making this decision was in March.
It's a weird one, isn't it? Because he didn't sign the contract till the week before the cup final last year. So
yeah, so I find it strange. I don't understand why you wouldn't just not have the deadline to make that decision later until, for example, we know whether we're going to be in the Champions League. I would think that would have been something the club would have looked at, but
yeah. So I'm not sure. I think true saying about top 3, like whether that will make it. I think it really depends when it's signed. Like if it's a new contract, it might be done. It might already be done, and we just don't know about it. So it might not matter on top 3. But I agree with Georgia. I think we should probably wait.
I think if that contract was already done, we would have heard about it after a 4-0 win on his birthday. I think that would.
Do you reckon? I reckon they'd wait.
No,
I reckon they'd wait until a big.
A big what though?
Well, we're a couple of games away potentially from securing Champions League.
Yeah, but that can go the other way, can't it? If it is already signed.
Well, this is the other thing, and this is why I agree with Georgia. In my opinion, they should be waiting. There should be some kind of clause in this contract, maybe verbally agree it, but then say with the caveat, if we drop out of the top 3, that contract obviously then doesn't happen. Something like that, I think, is probably that's probably the. I don't. It's a really tough one, isn't it? Because like I said, my personal opinion, I just think he'll get a new contract. So I just think there's too much going on at United at the moment. This is probably an easier option. I know people maybe don't want to hear that.
My thinking was the easier. I thought the easier option would be to just trigger the year extension and just deal with it in a year. Is sort
maybe,
of the
but I think
we would take.
My thinking behind it, and again, this is not anything based off anything I've heard, purely my opinion.
Yeah, neither's mine. Not that it was.
But I just think there's so much uncertainty around the club with a lot of things at the moment. There's obviously a lot going on, a lot of changes. This is a very quick win, I would imagine, from the club to just get stability on one side of the club and just be like, right, that's the manager. That's who he's reporting to 3 years. I just think it would make sense if you're looking at it from that point of view, just to get that stability there. And it stops the question being asked. Whereas if you do a year option, the question's going to be back here in 6 months. That's why I personally think it's going to be a new contract.
I think things can change. I'll be interested to see what happens. I think that if this was I remember being on the show when this new contract was announced at the end of last season with the kind of year and option for another year. And we said, do we think this is Mark Skinner's sort of basically like probation under Ineos, as they sort of did with Eric Ten Hag, but obviously he didn't get very long on probation. If we think this is his probation, like, do we think that he's done enough to stay, getting potentially top 3 again? Or are there are still plenty of people in the comments saying, no, we think we've hit our ceiling with him? It's a debate that I think will keep kind of rumbling on, but results are going well. So I guess you can definitely see from the club's perspective, if they do decide to just take an easy win and say, this is a manager that we're doing well under right now, we've given him a new contract, we're getting stability, you can understand why they do that.
Yeah, so that's what I mean. I just think I don't know. I might be completely wrong. As I say, I'm not across this or anything like that. I think we'll I don't think we'll hear anything before the last couple of games of the season. It'll be the same as last year, I would imagine. But yeah, I know you want to quickly wrap up. Can I just quickly address them? Because I thought this was a nice comment, actually, that Brandon put in. I did see you reply to my tweet as well. Very nice of you. Appreciate that. And everyone that also did comment as well. I didn't put it out for any other reason, which is why I apologize. There was so many comments. I've not even replied to Keris's comment. It's bad of me, that. But yeah, no, I massively appreciate that. Yeah, I'm honestly fine. Like, I'm good. It's just, yeah, as I put on the tweet, match days are just a little bit, which is why you'll notice I don't encourage people to come up to me these days if you see me about, because, yeah.
It's not personal.
No, it really isn't. And I apologize, Simon, if you're watching this. I know we've spoken about it, but obviously you saw me on Sunday pre-game, headphones in, whatever. But if you see me after a game, I'm usually all right. So, yeah, that's the time to catch me if you want to chat this season at the moment. Yeah, thank you, Bran. I really appreciate that.
Right.
Back over to you, Keris, in the studio.
Should we wrap it up there?
Yes, all good. I'm
all
ready
right.
to wrap up. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone, for watching. Really enjoyed doing this one again, and we'll hopefully have another one on the way soon if both of our lives calm down a little bit. Otherwise, we will see you in the next review, the next preview, whatever it is. But yeah, thank you very much for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.